So first, I want to thank Craig for being here. Thank you so much. Craig is currently the strength and conditioning coach for USTA player development. As many of you know, that takes he works with a lot of top national junior tennis players. He's also worked with Riley Opelka, spent a lot of time with our not last week, on Monday's guest Cece Bellis talking about him. We also had a few weeks ago Ann Lee talking about him as well, spent a lot of time with them. Those that you guys know, as well as a lot of other tennis players and athletes across the country. He has a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in exercise physiology, movement science from Florida State, and has been in the fitness industry for almost 25 years. So really excited to have him here, and I hope you guys take advantage of this opportunity. Before we get started, Craig, is there anything you would like to add or say?
No, I'm just very thankful to be part of this. I really appreciate the invitation. I know a lot of you know Coach Glover kind of connected us, and I'm really enjoying the opportunity to connect with people during these unique times. It's a very difficult time for a lot of people, but again, these are defining moments for everybody, and hopefully we're going to come out of this, better in a positive way. So I think that's real important. Everybody, personally, professionally, you're going to remember this for the rest of your life. So it is an exciting time, some defining moments here, but yeah, I look forward to helping and talking, and we can get going. Thank you.
Oh, thank you again. So again, I'm going to read some questions that you guys submitted, and then we'll go from there. There's not an exact order, so we'll figure out how to patch it. My first question is from Melissa and Sean Fenn, and they wanted to know best stretches for preventing injuries. I guess maybe you can divide lower for tennis players, I guess.
Okay. Well, I think I would just start with the common tight areas for the tennis players are going to be what? Probably the hip flexors and the hamstrings, very commonly, very, very tight. So plus the anterior shoulder, which would be the front of the shoulder. So those would probably be the three primary areas that you would want to stretch to stay healthy.
All right. Thank you. Next question is from Julia Kelly. She wrote, what's a good schedule for workouts based on junior tennis player? How many hours a week should they be spending doing fitness or strength and conditioning?
All right, that's a great question. I think first of all, we need to realize that it's a habit and it needs to be part of your day, part of your week, just like playing the sport. Okay, it shouldn't be thought of as an afterthought or separate. It's just going to be part of your day, part of your routines. So I mean, first and foremost, we need to learn how to warm up properly. And a lot of just good maintenance work can be done within the warm-up process. Things that are going to help your mobility or flexibility, things that are going to basically get you woken up and turned on. Light movement work can also be done during the warm-up. The injury prevention, shoulder prep, that can be done during the warm-up. So there's a lot of, very good strategic opportunities to get some good work in during the warm-up process. After that, it's all relative to kind of what your goals are, how old you are. When we get into, there's some slides I have for you. I think some of those things can be addressed there. But at the end of the day, you do need to start things at a young age. You do need to commit to the habit. And you can start with 2 days a week and build it up 3, 4, 5 days a week for like formal training. But a lot of that just increases as you get older. And but also, like I said, just make sure you're always warming up and cooling down, stretching properly. That's a daily exercise.
I've heard before that for every hour of play, it should be like 15 minutes of stretching, or that seems like a big number, but I guess that's professionals. Do you have any ratio for kids that they can try to maintain?
Well, I think anybody warming up to prepare for the sport, for the nature of tennis, you should be doing something at least 15 or 30 minutes, right? And then post-training or post-exercise, I always like to say the longer the session, the longer the cool down, okay? We live next to the airport here, guys, so relative to like planes taking off and landing, so a warm-up should be a nice slow incline, taking off to your elevation. Your elevation's like practice, all right? You're going to start this thing. So a gradual warm up, elevating just heart rate, joint range of motion, muscle activity, to where you're going to get to elevation and be ready to go. All right. You're not going to just, oh, I'm going to do a couple shoulder bands and kind of grab my knee and ankle and kind of twist my body. Okay, let's go hit, you know. So and then same with the cool down. You're coming after the practice. It's been real long and hard. You know, you're going to want to spend some time. That's where like some general, if you have a bike, you know, a good 5-10 minute slow ride, let the nervous system, let your mind kind of relax from the session, get into some either soft tissue or static stretching for another 10 or 15 minutes. So that's an analogy I like to make for that type of work. And we kind of go from there.
Nice. Okay, good. We can come back, I'm sure, for other questions. Again, next one I got from Sean Clark. This is I guess a coaching question. Is it ever hard to connect with the players that you work with?
Oh. And not only can it be hard, it is a very, very high priority for any coach. Okay. I like to call it the 3 C's of coaching. First of all, you need to care. You need to care about what you're doing. You need to care about your own work, right? What you're putting forth. You need to care about the people you're trying to help. All right. And the next one is what you just said. The second C to me is connect. You need to be able to connect to people, right? Right now, it's sometimes difficult for me, being as old as I am now, you know, trying to connect with the 11, 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds, right? So, but I have to figure out how they think, what they relate to, let alone pro athletes and things like that. But you do need to find a way to connect. You have to have some common ground. There's a lot of different ways to do that. It could be where you're from. It could be who you know. It could be a joke. It could be kind of knowing what they interact with and get familiar with it. But those are the first 2. The last 3, the third C of coaching is then I think you can coach. If you care enough and you find ways to connect to people, then you can coach. But I think that's a huge, huge part of it. In a difficult setting here, to be honest, on campus when we first started, training volume was a little foreign to our junior athletes that were coming in here. They were not used to regular training. So we had to build it in strategically, i.e. during the warm-up, hey, we're getting you ready for practice. And at first they were like maybe a little tired from it, but over time they adapted and they all said they felt better for doing it. Why? Because they were awake. They were ready to go. They were turned on versus taking half of the practice to wake up and kind of be warm finally. So, but that was a process, and try to how to connect with them and always teach and tell them why you're doing it, how it's going to help them and things like that.
Nice. Is this your own, the 3 C's, is this your own philosophy or did you like it?
Yeah, this isn't like company wide, but a lot of the things I've been doing, presenting, learning, I know I learn best by acronyms and short phrases, like things in groups of 3 or 4. And it just, you know, I've done different presentations or staff development, and I try to, almost goes back to connecting. I try to think of simple things, whether it's certain letters that you can make words for, acronyms, just points of emphasis. But yeah, that was my, that's an original for me.
Nice. I like it. I was thinking about using it for my next book title, but just wanted to check first.
Go ahead.
No, I'm kidding. Lena, Sriracha wanted to know, what are some of the exercises to strengthen the upper body?
Okay, so would they tell me like front side of the body, back side of the body, or either way, just in general?
That's the question I got. So
okay, you're good. Well,
I'm assuming front side. Tennis players are thinking front side of the body.
Right, and actually, I was just going to follow it up with this point, and I think that's a great point. Is the area of the body that you want to train actually for upper and lower body is the back side of the body. Okay, things you don't see in the mirror. All right, a lot of people want to train front side because that's kind of what you see in the mirror, but what you need to work on is the back side. So I'm talking between the shoulder blades right? Your upper outer back muscles into your low back, into your hips, hamstrings, and behind the knee. If you work from behind the knee to the shoulder blades on the posterior side of the body, you're going to help performance and you're going to help injury prevention. And I think that's important. Those are hand in hand. They're not separate, okay? But those are the areas of the body that move the body. They're also the areas of the body that help it slow down, but also help protect the front side, right? So what's going to help protect these guys here, all this forward motion, is going to be what's on the backside. Same with your knees, all right? Is what's going to help protect your knees is going to be your hips and hamstrings. But I think that, but in general exercises, I mean, with nothing, if you can do like push-up holds, maybe push-ups in general, try to progress those. Like, for example, put your hands up on something first versus flat on the ground, like a bench or a chair, and then progress to going to the floor, from knees first, then to the toes. Again, pull-up action, but there's a lot of different, I think several people have probably done like all the kind of the Y's and T's and W exercises for your shoulder blades that require no or little equipment. Getting that kind of volume is also just helpful to keep the shoulder healthy.
Oh, that's good. And I was just looking through a few questions, and most people actually had questions how to strengthen upper body. And I know you touched on this earlier, but Kylie Coach's question was a little more specific. How much is fitness needed per day based on your age? Now, I know it's age and skill level, but can you give me kind of those that come for the sectional camps, those that are like 15, 16, and then the pro players that you're working with? What are some of the similarities and differences?
Well, I think depending on your level of play, I mean, even a 13, 14, 15-year-old who's playing at a high level can be doing fitness daily, okay? In general, you could say for sake of age and stage and development that a 11 or 12-year-old could be around 2 days a week, and then as you go up every year or two, you add a day. You're 3 days a week to 4 days a week to 5 days a week. But we know a pro. I mean, that's their life, so they got to take care of their body. That is their life. So that's a daily routine. And again, but it just depends. Like, well, what do you call fitness too? Like, a good warm up can be fitness. Does it mean strength training? What about that? Well, again, generally you can do 2 days a week of total body workout at young ages. As you grow and mature, you can start kind of splitting up the body parts a little differently, going to 4 or 5 days a week. So those are just kind of examples of it. But I would just say for every hour you're on the court, you're going to still want to spend at least half that time off the court doing something specifically for fitness. Sometimes even 1-to-1 ratio if you want to include the warm-ups and cool downs.
Cece was confessing, your student Cece Bellis was confessing to us last time that till she was 15 she wasn't doing any fitness, and that she regretted it.
No, like I said, the world of tennis from my perspective and what I do, the strength and conditioning, fitness, whatever you want to call it, the sport of tennis is way behind. You could play yourself into shape. You can play yourself into playing and competing at a high level. It's a skill-based sport, right? So, but we cannot neglect what it takes for the body to stay healthy and perform well. So, but it's not part of the culture like your basketball, baseball, football, lacrosse, soccer, like those sports at young ages, like either people are finding people like me outside of their club or whatever, or it's built into the club. It's just part of the culture in terms of training, specifically strength training. So it's just the sport's a little behind with that. And it's very common, like a lot of our top pros that are like CC's age now will say, like when these juniors are coming in every, week and month, and they're like, I did nothing like that at that age for them. So, but again, you're trying to endure a sport that's very rigorous. You need to train your body to first endure the sport, like stay healthy. The key there is once the injury happens, what are you doing? You're taking away time from on-court work. You're taking away time to move your game to another level. So you need to stay healthy long enough to start building the work capacity, building those physical principles, physical qualities to help your game go to a new level. right? So stay healthy long enough to do that. If you're just constantly going up and down, oh, I hurt my shoulder, my hip flexor, my hamstring, my back, you're just doing this. It's just a little tough to get anywhere long term.
That's good. So jumping to, again, another topic, we're just jumping back and forth. That was a really great answer. I hope you guys took some notes.
First great answer today. That's the only time you said that.
No, yeah, I already talked about the 3 C's.
That's fine. Took me a little while to warm up.
I already took care of the 3 C's, so that was already, we already went there. Next question is from Abhiraj. What was it like teaching Ann Lee? What did you see in her that stood out for you? We have some Ann followers here. So.
Oh, Miss Ann Lee. She is so great. Just great person, great kid. Now, first of all, she was a pretty good mover to begin with, right? And she's very coachable. Like, she'll do anything you say, and some people can take advantage of that, but she is very coachable, and she's just a great person, very committed, sticks with her routines very well on the road as well, sticking with her warm-up, sticking with her training. But I think it's just mainly, again, her countenance, her personality. She's got what it takes. I think, the next thing for her now, again, is we're doing that right now, is taking her physicality to a new level and kind of pushing her to feel what that's like, because that's kind of the next step for her. I think she's got most all the skills you need. So, yeah. But great kid, great person. It's a pleasure to work with her.
Nice. Good. Next question from Sage. Is there, and again, you talked about the back muscles, but I want to kind of go back to it again. Is there a certain area of fitness that tennis players should focus on the most? We talk about strength training, cardio,
yep,
body balance, coordination. There's so many different aspects. Again, it goes to different age groups. So what are your thoughts?
Right. Very, very good question. So our 6 physical principles that we are going to work on, again, there's 6 of them, so it takes a little bit to remember this, but 4 of them have the same first letter, 2 and 2. So, all right. So first of all, the 2 M's. All right. So we have mobility, that's flexibility, right? That's ranges of motion of joints and muscles. And then we have movement. It's a movement-based sport. We got to learn how to move. We need to learn how to react and position the body to start and stop effectively. All right. So then we have the 2 C's, which is going to be conditioning. So, that's heart rate training, that's work capacity, but then coordination is the other one. So that's where like balance would fall into, but movement is coordination as well. The only reason we say that, because at a young age in our philosophy, a lot of your time is going to be spent on just general coordination, right? Hand-eye skills and things like that, balancing. And then the only other 2 are S and P, so that'd be strength and power. Okay, so those are the 6. Now, I will tell you, you do all 6 at all times, okay, in terms of your training. It's how much you do is based on your age and stage of development and your goals, okay? So, for example, a young athlete, they're not going to be doing a lot of resistance training. It's not that bad. It's just you're not going to do a lot of it. When you're a pro, the volume of that is going to be much higher. Same with power training, right? At a younger age, you're going to really try to work on the mobility, flexibility, because that's when you are like that. As you get older, it's tougher to change that. You're going to work a lot on conditioning and coordination, because you got energy, forever, and you need to learn how to, you need to get coordinated, right? Teaching the body how to move as a sequence and be balanced and things like that. So those are the 6. So we have coordination, conditioning, we have movement, mobility, and then we have strength and power. So, and then after that, as you really kind of, I always tell people it's like a pyramid. You want to establish this big base of those 6 principles so that the peak can be higher. But over time, a lot of those things are going to be really game style dependent, and then goals and needs dependent. Okay, so if you're trying to change your game style to where you need to kind of last longer in points or something like that, or vice versa, that's when you would do a little bit more conditioning or more power or movement or, things like that. Could be coming off of injuries, what qualities you can work on. Like CC is a perfect example. Well, when you're injured and coming back from especially significant injuries, you're going to just work on the ones that you can work on. Like it's as simple as that. What can I do? And I'm going to do that so that, you're hopefully going to minimize the decline in other areas. And when you get back healthy, you're ready to go. So that can be part of it too.
Nice. I like the game style specific. That makes sense.
I've heard that a lot. Like when you're training somebody, and I mean, a lot of times you just want to take away these like pretty gross global inadequacies, you might say, or inefficiencies. Like, well, they can't get out of the corner, they don't recover well, or if the ball, if we're going past like 5 or 6 shots, they're toast, or just things like that. You want to, and how can we just take those out? Like how can we train those so that those are not an issue? Like you don't ever want the physical part of the sport to be an exposing part. Like you don't want ever to have that be taken advantage of by your competition, right? Mm-hmm. So that's really a big job of ours. So some of it's like, yeah, I could work a lot more on conditioning, but this game style, I mean, after 3-4 balls, it's going to be over. And if it's not, it's going to be over.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. That's really, really good point. We'll take a few more questions, and then I want to make sure we get through your slide, and then we'll come back to it. Josh Miller wanted to know, how can I increase my endurance when I handle long matches, especially where we go third set is a tiebreaker, or third set's tiebreaker?
Okay.
Endurance.
So, hey, a great question regarding conditioning. Okay, so number one, you do and can need to play yourself into shape. Okay, and that can be your practice structure. Okay, how long a practice is, maybe how intense certain drills are for different parts of the practice. We actually just had that same conversation with our coaches here. Like, if we're using a scale of 1 to 10 to tell me how hard a practice is, all of them can't be 9s or 10s, and all of them can't be like that for 2 hours, right? You kind of need to fluctuate that intensity. But at the end of the day, when you do know, hey, a 3-set match, you might even know it's a certain time frame, 2.5 hours or more. Well, you need to just kind of start exposing the athlete to a practice that long, all right? And as similar to those competitive conditions as possible. Sometimes, things can be kind of simple. I think we tend to overcomplicate things, but when we just look at the body, all right, and how it adapts, if you're doing, I don't think any people are doing this, but if you're only practicing an hour and a half or whatever, and you're having tough time in 2.5 hour plus matches, well, that kind of makes sense. And sometimes everybody's structure is different for, am I coming into an academy? Am I coming in private? Am I in school? Am I not in school? What are these windows of time? But, trying to match those up as close to that competitive environment as possible when it comes both to time and intensity, I think is I think the biggest. I mean, even for our pros, like when you have to get ready for a slam, you're like, that's a whole different world. Like, if you're going to go 4 or 5 sets, like and that's the unique thing about tennis. It's an untimed sport. I mean, you're out there till it gets done. That's very hard to train. And sometimes that's when these other performance factors come in, like the mental skills. How resilient are you and how tough are you? Can we train you long enough to say, all right, at this point you're ready, but you never know what's going to happen, and the match may go further than that. At that point, it's grit, it's toughness, it's heart, it's mental training, and things like that. So, but besides that, you do want to present those. Because again, for slams and stuff, that's when you start seeing these athletes out for 3-hour practices or more, and things like that. So,
that's again, I won't say it's the first, but another great answer. Great answer. I'm taking notes. One of our questions from Coach Jason Katzer: how much distance running versus sprints and quick movements should tennis players be doing?
Oh, good one. Okay, so a good one. This is a touchy subject, a kind of a battle. Again, I think it's old school versus new school. It's what did I used to do when I played? I just ran. It is very important actually, because of what it does for recovery. Aerobic capacity helps in recovery, okay? But we do have to remember the nature of the sport is what? It's an explosive sport. It's a speed sport. It's change of direction. Your effort is going to be for X amount of time, and you're probably going to get twice that time to rest. Okay, work to rest ratios are probably going to be 1 to 2 to 1 to 5 in a match, all right, generally speaking, okay? So again, let's try to make that the factors, make that the method of taxing the body in the training, okay? Now, when you're doing those kind of things, work to rest ratios of 1 to 2 or 1 to 3 or 1 to 4, and if you manage those correctly, you're actually going to get aerobic benefit as well. So it's a nice 2-for-1 deal to train sports specifically, but also build that aerobic capacity. So I'll say the running, like right now, Miss Ann Lee, we have her running a lot. Well, why? Because we're months from competition. She's got limited equipment at home. This is a perfect time to build that aerobic base because she's really not able to play right now either. So that's a perfect time. And you need to kind of keep those joints and tendons and ligaments loaded in a way that's similar to being on the court. And this is the biggest challenge we are going to face right now as kids go back to playing is they're going to want to obviously get back out there as soon as possible. And the body, you know, we're trying to make sure these bodies are able to hold up to those loads and forces of change of direction in joints and tendons and ligaments. So I think if there's a general fitness concern, like a body weight issue, the long distance running is great. If again, there's a game style need to build up general endurance, it's great. I just think you have to try to save your pounding, save your joints, the stresses for practices versus putting a lot of that off in distance running. Again, if aerobic capacity isn't being exposed as a liability, you might say, but a lot of it still goes back to, I know when we started the department here, when campus opened almost 4 years ago, that was a big one. Oh, why aren't we out running? Why are we in it? All I used to do was run. And again, it's just the new school, new age of thinking of being more appropriate with your work to rest and kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone. But that's a good subject. And again, you can debate it all you want. I also feel like, again, meeting people where they're at. If there's athletes that they need to kind of mentally kind of get to a place a certain way and running does that for them, I don't want to take that away from them. I'm just going to go, I'll give you this, you're going to give me that. Or you can do this and you can do this much of it because I know that that's not going to take away from other goals, okay? So sometimes it just comes down to how much you're doing. 1 or 2 days a week, somebody wants to run a few miles, that's not going to kill anybody. That's not going to detract from speed and power or change of direction qualities. But if they want to do it every day, we'd have to kind of talk about it. So.
Well, I hope they're doing one or the other and not debating and doing neither. So that's my hope. I know we want to get to the presentation, but I'm just getting so many questions coming.
That's fine. I'd rather do this. I think the presentation is a nice thing from a back pocket if you want to see some things formally. And before we get off, if we don't get to it, there's a couple of things I may show you that pertain to some of these questions, a visual that might help.
Yeah. Another question from Coach Shaw. Considering the importance of movement, do you train lower body, torso, hips, and toes more than the upper torso, core, and the head?
Yep, for sure. The emphasis of our physical training is going to be the lower body. That's what moves the body. You got to get there to hit a shot. Again, you don't neglect anything. It's just the priority is going to be your lower body, both for strength capabilities as well as movement. And, the other thing we got to keep in mind is when you're teaching movement, again, try to take out the big global errors, like the taking too many little steps to get somewhere or overreaching so that now the body isn't in a position to accelerate. Like, try to change those things. But for example, when I get into like how I'm going to move forward on the court and does the athlete basically kind of split and then cross over or split and then like push and open, if both are quick, they're going to do kind of what they've probably done thousands of times as they've been playing. It's hard to change those motor patterns. You can, but you have to ask yourself how much time and energy it takes to change it, and could you use that time to fix other things. But that movement piece is, again, it's so important. We're doing a lot of that internally as well. It's very important. It's a collaboration from us and the tennis coaches to help fix it. But again, anticipation, recognition is a huge part of it. They might get exposed movement-wise because they just didn't recognize what was coming, okay? And it could be the surface they're on and where the ball is and things like that. But definitely lower body, definitely backside of the lower body, and make sure you're training both strength and power capabilities, which will help with movement.
Nice. Very nice. Wow. Really good stuff. I feel like I'm keep looking at the time to make sure we stay in time, but I also take a mental image to go back to this and listen to it again. Questions from Samil Patel and Mahi. Samil, for juniors, should I focus more on flexibility or strength? And are push-ups not good for tennis players? True or myth? This is one of the things that I've learned and I got in trouble for. So I'm curious to hear your answer. Okay,
good. So, and remind me if I don't get to the second part of the question. So first, from a mobility and strength standpoint, again, you'll be doing both as a young athlete. You're going to want to do more mobility at the younger age versus strength. And then that'll kind of flip, especially after you go through your growth process or, kind of your maturity process. So after that, you're not going to not do mobility. You're just going to probably do less of it and focus more on strength. Okay, so in general speaking, that's how you do it. But again, strength training for a young athlete and even mobility training, you can do at the same time. I mean, like lunge walks are mobility, it's actually balance, and it's strength. We don't have to think we just have to have a bar on our back with a bunch of weight to do strength training. I mean, your own body weight is resistance. So at young ages, you can do push-ups. I mean, we'll talk about push-ups, lunges, squats, things like that against your own body weight. Those are just your training movement patterns against your body weight, but it's still strength related as well as mobility. Now for the push-up, it's not bad. It's just maybe not the best if you're just doing a ton of them or every day. And upper body strength is important, but again, it's a front side movement that you need to, yes, endure, but you don't want to do so much of this that when you do this, you're going to get exposed and you could be injured. Like, you've heard the phrase overuse injury, right? Well, that comes from relative to your physicality, relative to how much strength and conditioning and fitness, relative to those 6 principles. Those are not shored up enough to endure the sport. And then there's a breaking point. Okay. So if you're looking at push-ups, you can do it for general upper body strength. You just don't need to do a lot of it. But I also know that most people do push-ups horribly wrong. So why do them either, right? So, when you're just kind of doing, and you think you're moving up and down, I mean, that's not really what you do want. Number one, you want that range of motion. Number two, if you look at my elbows, you want them kind of diagonally down like this. You don't want them up like that. That's not great for the shoulder. So you want this pattern of movement, but you have to find a way, whether it's on your knees or elevate your hands, where you can get that range of motion, right, to build the strength for it. Because the worst thing is trying to get stronger in limited ranges of motion. And then when you have to get back on something, look at where the arm goes for a serve or a forehand. Well, shoot, I've only been working like this. Then when I get back here, pop, there goes, that's when things happen. So that's why range of motion is really important.
Good. And I'll just say from my standpoint, I always try to tell kids and coaches and everyone, because I used to make the mistake younger, was that don't do push-ups during your tennis. Like, you're like, because you do a couple push-ups, all of a sudden your feel, your rotation and everything. So I think if you do it in the morning before you go to school and all those things, they're fine as long as they do good form. But, I hopefully you agree. I just figured I ask you there.
Yeah, you're good.
Another question. We've got so many good ones. What have you found the most beneficial technique for recovery? Ice baths, certain foods, hot water, cold water. What's your thought on recovery?
Okay, if one of our athletic medicine personnel was on here, they would answer that better than I will. That's not what I'm an expert at, but I will say that, again, if we don't overcomplicate things and simply focus on sleep and diet, or rest, sleep, and nutrition, you're going to really help yourself out. So I think those are the first two key things. And whether you're using an ice bath, great stretch routine and cool down is going to help a lot with it. Or if you're doing, like we have like a Normatec or Mark Pro, things like that, those are modalities that maybe people don't have access to. But at the end of the day, you only really need recovery as if you're training hard enough, right? So some people get into, well, what am I doing for recovery? I'm like, well, I don't know. Are you even training hard enough to use some of those modalities? But I think if you just, a lot of your health and longevity is going to come from proper warm up and cool down, all right? And then enough sleep and the right diet, okay? So I think that's really the most important thing. So getting enough sleep, 8 to 10 hours, I mean, especially the young athletes. And then, again, generally speaking, I could go into diet specifically. It's just part of, my field as well. Not that I'm certified like our dietitian. I can give general guidance. It's just not something I want to get into now. But again, if you're eating often, eating a balanced diet, just make sure you are burning a lot of energy. So I think the thing about this would be stay away from the fad diets where they're taking out certain, no carbs, no fat, no protein, like this and that. But you do need a lot of carbohydrates. That's how the brain functions, and you guys are out burning a lot of energy. So that's really important.
Nice. Here's a question from Kate and Bella. How have you helped students overcome adversity? Are you ever training people who are not motivated?
I wouldn't say not motivated. I think education piece I think they're motivated to get better. I think they sometimes need a little teaching to help motivate them to why we're doing what we're doing, particularly maybe spending 30, 45 minutes during their warm-up before they go hit. What was the other part of the question? It was motivation, something else.
Dealing with adversity. How have you helped them deal with adversity?
Right. So adversity in our department, player development. So I spoke about athletic medicine. That's going to be our athletic trainers, our nutritionists. We also have mental skills. We're doing a virtual camp right now for some girls. They're in a mental skills camp, but the S&C is provided. So what we try to do is whatever they're working on within their mental skills, it could be confidence, it could be resilience. I'm going to try to use the S&C to basically manifest or elicit them to use their mental skills. So I think, for conditioning purposes, that's a great tool to actually kind of expose somebody's competitiveness, especially when we train in groups here, kind of see who really wants to compete and win every time or who kind of taps out. You kind of see their comfort level get disturbed, and then they're, kind of out to lunch, you might say. So that's how training is used to help kind of the adversity part. But a lot of that is also you learn by doing. You get in situations that, I didn't handle this well, or I didn't get through this well, or we all learn from adversity. That's the beauty of it. It's not fun during it, but that's how you get better,
Yeah. No, it's true.
That's what we're all dealing with right now. I mean, you can't play, you can't train somebody in person. They don't have equipment. I mean, you got to get creative and figure it out, which is really the foundation of tennis. It's a problem-solving sport.
Nice. Does I guess this is not adversity, but back to kind of cardio and endurance. Do you use a pacer test on your players, or what kind of testing do you do to make sure that they're hitting their marks?
Okay, good. The pacer test, otherwise known as the beep test, there's a few different names out there for it. There's actually a few different versions of the test.
Yeah.
Great test. It's something that we use in our preseason. So the time we're in November to January 1st, where we have people for 6 weeks trying to take but some before and after measurables while they're not playing as much. So that's a good one. Sometimes it can be simple as some 200 intervals, some 400 intervals. That's meters, 200 meter, 400 meter. It can be right now. Actually, that's what I did with Ann. I said, 6 weeks ago when this started, I said, all right, we know we're not playing, but we need to still have a defined purpose for training. Let's set a goal. All right, let's do something simple. We know you're going to be running. Let's see what your mile time is right now. All right, and then
what is her mile time?
So
where is she at right now with her mile time?
I think there's HIPAA violations if I share that.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
I'll call her and ask. No problem.
Yeah. So that was a general, just to establish a goal and a purpose to the training, because we knew it wasn't going to be, again, it's hard a lot of you on the call and a lot of our pros, their whole life, the majority of their lives lately has been geared towards you're in and out of tournaments. You always have a purpose. You are competing. Like now it's like when all that gets taken away, you kind of have to figure out what kind of short-term goal can I set just to give me a good reason to be, physically working. So that'd be an example of those conditioning tests. When people are injured for some reason, then we could do some like a Versa climber, some non-impact version of a test, rower, bike, things like that, where you're going to look at a unit of time or distance and try to work like that.
Nice. I just want to give everyone an opportunity. We have a few minutes left. I guess maybe we'll have to bring you again in the future for the presentation. But I just want to go over, if I have a couple more questions, but this is your time for everybody in the chat. If you have any additional questions, or if I didn't ask your question, if I didn't get a chance to see it, this is the time to do so. I think you've covered so many different topics.
I'll share. It's in the presentation, but it's easy to talk through. In general, right? In general, as a tennis coach, when you're watching practice, in any exercise within strength and conditioning, if you monitor the 3 Ps, all right, the 3 Ps, you're going to do yourself a world of good. Okay, so the first P is going to be posture. All right, so that has to do with what? It has to do with your spine and your shoulders. Okay, what am I in a shoulders back, spine straight position, or am I kind of rolled forward like that with a rounded spine? So posture is number 1. Position is going to be number 2. Okay, so by that I mean, where are your hips and your knees? Okay, are you kind of in a high hip, kind of almost a bouncing, galloping type of position? Or are you low, athletic base, hips behind you, right? Hips behind your ankles, hips definitely behind the shoulders so that the spine is forward, and the knees bent, things like that. That's position, okay? And then you have the last P being pattern. Okay, you can have good posture, you can have a good position, but then your pattern of movement from those 2 things is inefficient, or some of those things break down. For example, you're in a good position, you have good posture, but then when you go to move, your like knees slide forward first, and then you have to extend the leg to move, versus being like a hip-based mover. Or once you move, you lose your posture, or you lose your posture after a few shots. That's a big one too. So, but if you do notice and try to work and shore up the 3 Ps, you're always going to do what? You're always going to help improve efficiency, okay? You're always then going to help improve speed, okay? You're going to improve strength, right? And if you do those things, you're going to be able to endure, all right? So if you do those things, again, I try to simplify things. If you do those things, you're going to help a lot of things, a lot of mistakes, a lot of things that could cause injury, a lot of things that, again, if you're inefficient, you're going to be spending more energy than you should be, and that means you're not going to be able to last as long as somebody else. So I think that'd be a good general message there. And I think maybe the last thing, I have more time if you need it, but there's no black and white. There's a lot of time, no clear wrong or right answers. A lot of this has to do with collaborating with coaches, with players. But I do think you do need to remember that there's good, there's better, and then there's best. Okay, and we want to try to get through the good and better as soon as we can to get to the best. An example is, the distance running. Okay, it's good. Is it the best for what we need to do right here with the situation? So I think that's an important thing. It's not black and white. There's not a lot of absolutes, but there's definitely good, better, and best.
I'm taking notes. So again, hopefully everyone else is. We got the 3 C's, the 3 P's, and then you had efficiency, speed, strength, and endurance. I don't know if that's ESSF, but ESSE. So we'll figure it out. My question is with endurance. Again, it's a nutrition question, but as far as recovery drinks or things to help you not cramp up, obviously part of it is just your diet and nutrition, but is there anything you want to say about that topic?
I think just again, reinforcing drinking plenty and getting your nutrients from real foods versus relying on the sport drinks, just because the nutrients from the real foods are going to be absorbed better into the body. We have Gatorade obviously on board as a sponsor. So basically although it's pretty nice outside now, but from late May to October, it's pretty thick down here, pretty hot, pretty humid. And we have it's called Gator Light, but it's basically like salt water. You put it in your drink and that helps a lot. So the cramping, because it comes from dehydration, but again, a big part of it too, it can come from nerves. You're nervous and you don't know. It's like you're not like flexing, like you're not out here flexing big muscles and stuff, but those nerves are like basically always firing all these little muscles. And over time, like that can also lead to, part of the body cramp, total body cramp. But there's a moving target there to really figure that out in terms of like, if you're having a real problem with cramping, I would rely on our athletic medicine team to handle that. But, drinking plenty of water, get most of your nutrients from your diet, make sure you have enough carbohydrates. But I'm not going to say anything other than like what Gatorade provides us in terms of like something that's like, hey, this is our magic drink after this stuff to prevent this,
Got it. I guess my last question would be so most of from the kids' standpoint here, who are playing high level sectional and national tournaments, what is some advice that you could give them or that I could give them to just remind them the importance of strength and conditioning, because they start the sport by playing tennis, and that's the fun part, is going around and, they're treating, a lot of times they think that playing tennis is the conditioning part. I play 2 hours, but understanding the importance of it. You touched upon it a little bit earlier, but I figure one more time.
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, the nature of the sport actually and how it's competed and how often it's competed does not put our body in an advantageous position, especially when the nature of the sport forces primarily very young, undeveloped athletes to be out competing very often and at a high level all year long. So we, at some point, again, have to make it a habit and build it into our routines. So it's simple as this. If you're not in a tournament, you could be training 3, 4, 5 times a week, right? You could be doing that for 2 or 3 weeks, you're not playing. You go to compete and you're in a tournament, and the likelihood of you being in one and then another one and then another one is kind of high, maybe only 1 week in between. You take what you've been doing and just cut it back. So instead of 3, 4, 5 days a week, go back to 2 or 3. Just do not remove it, and you have to stay committed to it. You have to think long term. The big challenge, again, with rankings and points and how many options there are to compete, you kind of get caught up in this rat race to go run around and keep playing, which takes away from real training that can help you physically develop. And it kind of goes back to, what can you do to, number one, stay healthy long enough to push your game to a new level. All right. So when you're on the road, we need to do what? Figure out, what can I do on the road? And that's what we're doing right now, because a lot of our athletes have nothing, right? They don't have equipment. They're in their homes, forced to be in their homes. Well, there's a lot that you can do with nothing, okay, for both mobility and strength and conditioning and that. So that's, I think, the very most important thing. And I don't want this to be taken the wrong way, because our current pros will tell me the same thing. Even junior parents that I've worked with, retroactively thinking about it, will say the same thing. These results do not matter as much as you think they do in the big picture, but what is important is, are you putting in place the pieces that will allow you to reach your potential, achieve a goal? Okay, so what I mean by that too is, again, you're trying to endure a very rigorous sport, and you can't expect yourself just to play. You can play yourself into shape. You will not be able to play yourself to stay healthy, okay? It's a lopsided sport, right? There's imbalances. It's the same with like baseball and stuff like that. There's going to be eventually a breakdown. Even if there's not a breakdown, right? And I think everybody could probably sit around and go, have I been hurt? Yeah. Do I know somebody who's been hurt? Yeah. Or even if you haven't, you're probably going to reach a plateau though. So what do you want? You know, I think you just have to look big picture. What can I start putting in place? You know, in our situation, it's nice to have these resources, but within your own community, your own setting, you want to put together your own performance team. The performance team model being, you know, you, the athlete, as the tennis player, the tennis coach, whoever's doing the fitness, right? Strength and conditioning, who's doing your mental, who's doing your nutrition, all right? And, you know, those are pieces that trying to figure out how they can get started, how they can get built up or maintained are important for your future, just in general.
Really, really, really good stuff.
And the
Greg,
the last thing, again, it's like anti-establishment, but know it's hard because of how it's competed, but try to play multiple sports as long as you can. They all help each other. It's going to help limit the overuse injuries. But I do understand it's hard to do because you only have so much time, and it's a skill-based sport. And I know what it means to not be out there, but in general, in a general good athletic development model, you know, trying to play multiple sports, especially up until like the, 15 years, 14, 15, if you can, till 16 grade, before you kind of choose one to go after. But there's a lot of social influences there, and the nature of how sports competed. But multiple sports is very, at a young age, is very important.
That's good. Thank you, Craig. How can, if somebody will have a question for you, or how can they connect with you if people want to connect with you? Are you Instagram followers, or you want to give a handle or anything? How can people connect with you?
All right. First of all, I have never got into social media. Facebook, which I guess Facebook's old now. Instagram, Snap, whatever. I'm not on those things. I don't do them. The only time I'm on them, I think, we filmed some stuff for USTA, and somebody be like, "Oh, I saw you on." I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool." But I don't do it personally. I'm too old school, so it's a phone and an email. My email is craig.acker@usta.com. So that would be the best start.
Good. Thank you. I want to, again, thank you so much for your time. So much useful information. I really, really appreciate it. I want to thank everyone who's also here for participating and also for asking questions and just being involved. And I'm sure you guys got tremendous value. Again, maybe in the future we'll do something again like this, or would love to even bring you to Philly one of these days. I know you have a busy schedule when all this passes, but I want to thank you for your time. And those of you who are also participants, there's also coming up a different USTA webinar. If you want to email me or shoot me a text, I can give you a link for that as well. Thank you. But Craig, I appreciate it so much, and stay safe, and talk to you soon.
Yeah, very welcome. And I know a lot of things aren't changing soon, so if you need more time or content, I'm all for it. So I enjoy helping and talking about things that hopefully people can relate to. So But yeah, thanks so much for having me on. Again, Coach Glover is awesome, and CC are great people. Really appreciate being part of all this, and thanks again for having me on.
Thank you. Take care.
All right.